Thank you, Nina Enrique. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. President Donald Trump says the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip after Palestinians are resettled elsewhere and develop it economically.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site.
And the news starts now. President Donald Trump says the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip after Palestinians are resettled elsewhere and develop it economically. Now, President Trump unveiled his surprise plan without providing specifics at a joint press conference with visiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Thomas I. Likeness for more.
The announcement followed Trump's shock proposal earlier on Tuesday for the permanent resettlement of Palestinians from Gaza to neighboring countries. Trump called the enclave, where the first phase of a fragile ceasefire is in effect, a demolition site.
I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time. Being in its presence just has not been good, and it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there and lived a miserable existence there.
The people of Gaza have been largely displaced, their homes destroyed, but they still eke out an existence there. So what does Trump propose for the nearly 2 million Palestinians who call Gaza home?
Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck.
Trump says the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip and own it. He says Americans will dismantle all of the unexploded bombs, clean up the rubble, and create jobs and housing for the people of the area.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
Sounding like a real estate developer, Trump says everyone he's spoken to loves the idea.
I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so this could be so magnificent.
One person who does not love the idea is Brian Catoulas. He's a policy analyst at the Middle East Institute. Catoulas says Trump is just thinking out loud.
I think he's just making things up off the cuff. Most certainly there's no plan behind this. And if there is, it's not a plan that has any connection to reality in today's Middle East, and it's certainly not in consultation with the Palestinians or neighboring countries like Egypt and Jordan, which reject the first step in his plan, which is to remove all the Palestinians of Gaza and put them in their countries.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to Trump's proposal, saying that it's an idea worth paying attention to and worthwhile pursuing. A somewhat lukewarm endorsement. This is how Catoulas sees Netanyahu's response.
Netanyahu is not a big visionary leader here. His main focus is trying to stay in power. So he'll continue to tread water, probably not criticize Trump because he doesn't want to get crosswise with Trump, but he probably also won't see any practical import in any of these ideas.
Trump's dreams of the U.S. owning and developing Gaza have been condemned by Palestinian supporters, and Arab countries have shown no interest in taking in Gaza's displaced population. This proposal is destined for the dustbin. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
Now, Saudi Arabia has dismissed President Donald Trump's claim that it would normalize ties with Israel without a Palestinian state. The kingdom's foreign ministry reaffirmed its firm stance, rejecting any attempt to displace Palestinians and calling its position non-negotiable. Trump sparked controversy today by announcing that the U.S. plans to take over Gaza after relocating Palestinians and developing the enclave. He made the remarks alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Saudi Arabia remains unmoved, with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman making it clear that the kingdom's position is final, while Trump hopes to bring Riyadh into the Abraham Accords. Following the UAE and Bahrain, Saudi Arabia insists normalization is off the table without a Palestinian homeland. And do you know Guantanamo Bay? Well, the U.S. might be getting another offshore prison, and this time it's in El Salvador. The Trump administration said it's still assessing whether it could take up El Salvador's offer to house U.S. citizens convicted of crimes in its jails. Take a look.
Estamos finalizando, creo que lo va a anunciar el secretario. Estamos anunciando.
We are finalizing it, and I believe the Secretary will announce it. We are announcing a much more important agreement on the same subject, with a much greater scope than those made in 2019. In this case, it is something that the Secretary will say if we finish closing it. It is a much greater agreement that is unprecedented in the history of relations not only between the United States and El Salvador, but and Latin America.
El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele just made what Secretary of State Marco Rubio calls an extraordinary offer. They'll take in America's prisoners and deportees. And get this, it doesn't matter what country they're from. They'll even take U.S. citizens.
He has agreed to accept for deportation any illegal alien in the United States who is a criminal from any nationality, be they MS-13 or Tren de Aragua, and house them in his jails. And third, he has offered to house in his jails dangerous American criminals in custody in our country, including those of U.S. citizenship and legal residence.
Now, if you're wondering why El Salvador would do this, here's the backstory. Since taking office in 2019, Bukele has been on a massive crackdown. His country now has the world's highest incarceration rate. And we're talking over 100,000 people behind bars. He's even built this massive mega prison that can hold 40,000 inmates. No family visits, no human rights observers, and just occasional guided tours. Has it worked? Well, crime rates have plummeted and Salvadorans love him for it. But there's a darker side. Human rights groups are raising serious concerns about torture and abuse. So what's in it for El Salvador? Money. Bukele says he'll charge less than U.S. prisons, but for his country, it could mean big profits. Bukele openly admitted he would charge a competitive fee, cheap by U.S. standards, but a financial windfall for his government. If the U.S. outsources even a fraction of its 2 million incarcerated people, Bukele could make a fortune. The U.S. has held Guantanamo Bay in Cuba for over 120 years, paying just $4,000 a year in rent. It was used to detain and torture terror suspects, but with El Salvador, Washington won't even have to do the dirty work themselves. Unlike Guantanamo Bay, which America controls, these prisons would stay under El Salvador's management, and that's what's raising eyebrows in Washington. Now we've covered President Trump's global moves, and now let's look at home. His latest executive order, creating America's first sovereign wealth fund. The Commerce Department has 90 days to draft a plan, but what is a sovereign fund and where will the money come from? Take a look. Think of it as a country's national investment portfolio. While your mutual fund or pension fund belongs to you individually, a sovereign fund belongs to the entire nation. These funds invest in various assets, from stocks and bonds to real estate and even sports teams. Typically, countries create these funds using surplus money. Gulf nations use their oil revenues, while China invests in trade surplus. Currently, there are 90 such funds worldwide, managing a combined $8 trillion. But here's where it gets interesting. America's case is unique. Unlike other countries, the U.S. has been running deficits, not surpluses. So where will the money come from? According to Commerce Secretary Scott Bessent, the plan is to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet.
We're going to stand this thing up within the next 12 months. We're going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet for the American people. We're going to put the assets to work, and I think it's going to be very exciting. We're going to study best practices as done around the world. It'll be a combination of liquid assets, assets that we have in this country as we work to bring them out for the American people.
President Trump has already suggested one potential use for the fund, acquiring TikTok.
And as an example, TikTok, we're going to be doing something perhaps with TikTok, and perhaps not. If we make the right deal, we'll do it, otherwise we won't. But I have the right to do that, and we might put that in the sovereign wealth fund, whatever we make, or if we do a partnership with very wealthy people, a lot of options, but we could put that as an example in the fund, and we have a lot of other things that we could put in the fund. And
the timeline is ambitious. Trump envisions a $2 trillion fund, which would make it the world's largest, surpassing Norway's $1.74 trillion fund and China's $1.33 trillion fund. Interestingly, this initiative has found bipartisan support. Joe Biden previously explored a similar concept, focusing on critical infrastructure and supply chains. The proposal marks a significant shift in U.S. policy. Until now, America hasn't needed a sovereign fund, largely due to its robust private sector. 16 of the world's 20 largest fund management firms are American. According to Trump's executive order, and I quote, "The fund aims to promote fiscal sustainability, reduce tax burdens on families and small businesses, establish long-term economic security, and enhance U.S. economic leadership globally." While the 90-day timeline for creating such a massive fund seems ambitious, this initiative appears to be as much about projecting power as it's about investment strategy. And we're looking at another U.S.-China rivalry, this time in Panama. President Donald Trump has had his eye on Panama for a while, and his biggest concern, the Panama Canal. It's one of the most important waterways in the world, linking the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. The U.S. built it in 1914 but handed control over to Panama in 1999. And now Trump says he wants it back. Why? He believes China is calling the shots. Take a look.
now we had another big thing, speaking of China. China's involved with the Panama Canal. They won't be for long. And that's the way it has to be. Marco just got back, as you know. He's in the process of coming back. I guess he's almost back by now. And he had a very long conversation with the leader of Panama, the respected man, and some others, the entire leadership group. And we're trying to work a deal on the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal was given foolishly years ago to, it shouldn't have been happened, years ago to Panama by Jimmy Carter and the group. We either want it back or we're going to get something very strong, or we're going to take it back. And China will be dealt with. And we didn't give that to China, we gave it to Panama. We shouldn't have given it to Panama, but Panama, as you know, has violated the agreement, totally violated the agreement. So that's in the process right now, but they did have a very good meeting with the head of Panama.
But here's the thing, China does not control the Panama Canal. It's fully operated by Panama. What China does have is a business presence. A Hong Kong-based company runs 2 ports at either end of the canal, and Chinese state-owned firms are involved in construction projects, including a major bridge. And that's what Trump is worried about: China's growing footprint. So Trump sent Secretary of State Marco Rubio to Panama. On Sunday, Rubio met with President Jose Raul Molino and laid out Washington's concerns. While he was there, he also visited the canal and even watched a deportation flight carrying undocumented migrants to Colombia, because Panama is a key U.S. partner in stopping illegal immigration.
We recognize that many of the people who seek mass migration are often victims and victimized along the way. It's not good for anyone. The only people who benefit from mass migration are traffickers. And so this is a program that shows how cooperating with our strong allies here in Panama.
After all this, Trump's tone softened. Why? Because right after Rubio left, Panama made big announcements. First, it's launching an audit of that Hong Kong-based company managing the 2 ports. If anything shady turns up, Panama could scrap the deal.
The ports do raise doubts, but as I said, so far I have no elements of judgment to opine anything more. Let's wait for the audit of the comptroller, and we will see how affected or not is the national interest in function of that concession.
Second, Panama is letting U.S. warships cross the canal for free, something Trump had been pushing for, complaining about high transit costs. And the biggest move, Panama won't renew its membership in China's Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI.
The Memorandum of Understanding of 2017 about the Silk Road, the Belt and Road Initiative, will not be renewed by my government.
Now that's President Xi Jinping's massive global infrastructure program, often criticized as a debt trap for smaller nations. Panama was the first Latin American country to join back in 2017, and under the deal, China had proposed several major projects: a high-speed rail line to Costa Rica, a subway line in Panama City, a new container port, a bridge across the canal, the only project that actually moved forward. But most of those projects have been stalled for years. And now, with Panama stepping away from BRI, even the bridge could be in doubt. Rubio called this a huge win for U.S.-Panama relations.
We don't want to have a hostile or negative relationship with Panama. I don't believe we do. But we had a frank and respectful conversation, and I hope it'll yield fruits and results in the days to come. We do a lot of other things with Panama that go beyond just the canal. I mean, they've been a great partner on the slowing down the rate of migration on the Darien and coming across the Darien Gap and the like. So I think it was a good visit.
Trump will likely agree, though we don't know if this will stop him from eyeing control of the canal. For now, the developments mark a clear diplomatic win for Washington and a setback for Beijing's ambitions in Latin America. U.S. President Donald Trump says he wants to close the U.S. Department of Education using an executive order. But he acknowledges he will need buy-ins from Congress and teachers' unions to fulfill his campaign pledge to do so. Angel Membrere reports.
The Education Department has been high on Trump's list of targets. A White House official says an executive order, expected to be issued later this month, will direct the Secretary of Education to work to close the department. The official says a 90-day review will take place to outline a plan, and input from Congress will be sought. Trump says schools are not being run properly and education should be turned over to individual states.
If I could give the schools back to Iowa and Idaho and Indiana and all these places that run properly, there's many of them, I think. So if you look at the list, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, believe it or not, China's doing very well on that list, a list of well-educated, where they run their school system well. You have a lot of countries, not surprising names, I think that if you moved our schools into some of these states that are really well-run states, they would be as good as Denmark and Norway and Sweden and some of the other states.
The president has proposed Linda McMahon to lead the department, although she has not yet been confirmed by the Senate for the role. So why is Trump bothering to appoint a Secretary of Education if the department is going to be shut down?
I told Linda, I hope you do a great job and put yourself out of a job. I want her to put herself out of a job, education department. So we're ranked number 40 out of 40 schools, right? We're ranked number 1 in cost per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world, and we're ranked at the bottom of the list. We're ranked very badly. And what I want to do is let the states run schools. I believe strongly in school choice, but in addition to that, I want the states to run schools, and I want Linda to put herself out of a job.
Trump's main roadblock will be the Senate, where Republicans hold 53 to 47 majority. But major legislation, like a bill to eliminate a cabinet-level agency, would need 60 votes and thus the support of 7 Democrats to pass. Senate Democrats have given no sign they would support abolishing the Education Department. Randy Weingarten, president of the American Foundation of Teachers, said her union would welcome a chat with Trump. She says this move will undermine and hurt, not help, the lives of millions of working and middle-class kids whose public education is improved by federal dollars. Angel Membrari for NET25 World News.
Thai hospitals are struggling to care for Myanmar refugees after U.S. aid cuts left camp medical facilities shuttered. At Ta Song Yang Hospital in northwestern Thailand, doctors rushed to treat 86-year-old Adabi, a refugee with heart failure and pneumonia, as her daughter watched tearfully. She's one of many patients now seeking emergency care at Thai facilities after healthcare services in refugee camps collapsed. The crisis deepened when President Trump announced plans to wind down the U.S. Agency for International Development, which funds humanitarian aid globally. Along the Thai-Myanmar border, tens of thousands of refugees in mountainside camps previously relied on USAID-funded medical care through the International Rescue Committee. While Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul pledged last week that the Thai health system would support affected refugees, local officials warn government hospitals may not be able to handle the long-term burden. The hospital director says they're considering stationing an ambulance at the camp for emergency transfers.
There are cases that are too much for them, Mela refugee camp to handle, like complex cases that the medics can't take care of or don't have sufficient equipment for. Then these cases will be transferred to our hospital. Yesterday, we spoke about assigning one ambulance to be stationed inside the camp so they can use it to transfer patients here.
But broader concerns remain about sustainable health care for this vulnerable population. And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. The U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visited the U.S.-Mexico border in El Paso, Texas, meeting with Marines and Federal Border Patrol agents. His visit comes just weeks after President Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border, ordering troop deployments to reinforce security. During his visit, Hegseth emphasized the military's long-standing role in border security, but noted that the current administration is taking it to a new level.
The Defense Department has been helping on the border for decades, just not at the level that President Trump has charged us with right now. Because we believe, and he believes, that border security is national security. Guys and gals of my generation have spent decades in foreign countries guarding other people's borders. It's about time we secure our own border. We will defend this line. And in talking to the men and women in uniform, they're proud to be here. They're excited to be here. They're motivated to be here because they're defending their friends, their family, their communities, their church, their schools, their loved ones from an invasion of people whose intentions we don't know.
Hegseth was joined by White House Board Czar Don Homan, who highlighted the unprecedented level of coordination between the military and law enforcement agencies.
I've never seen the amount of engagement from the military on the border helping to secure the border. I've never seen the engagement from other law enforcement agencies, whether it's FBI, U.S. Marshals, DEA, DOJ's at the table across the country doing operations. This is a game changer. We will finally succeed and have an operational control of our southern border.
The visit comes as reports surface of Mexican drug cartels ramping up attacks against U.S. agents. According to an internal cartel memo published by multiple news outlets, criminal organizations have authorized the use of suicide drones targeting Border Patrol agents and military personnel. Social media posts from cartel-affiliated accounts have even called on illegal migrants to kill ICE agents to gain entry into the U.S. Just last week, Border Patrol officers in Texas came under gunfire from cartel members. Texas officials now say the presence of U.S. Marines has forced the cartels to retreat from certain areas. As cartel violence escalates, Secretary Hegseth says thousands more troops will be deployed to reinforce border security, with the Trump administration framing the situation as an invasion of the United States. Meanwhile, police in Ohio are on the hunt for a shooter after a deadly incident at a New Albany warehouse yesterday afternoon. One person was killed and 5 others were wounded in what police are calling a targeted attack.
At this point, we have 1 confirmed fatality. We have 5 that were transported to the hospital. Their conditions, I'm not able to comment on their conditions at this point. We have a person of interest, and we are working to locate them and bring them into custody. And again, this is quite a tragedy, and it's really a fluid situation and the investigation's really just begun. You know, they went to different hospitals. We have officers at those hospitals. At this point, our focus is on making sure that we have this building secure, that we're able to obtain the proper search warrants to search the location and get that investigative process started. But again, we have officers with all the victims, so we'll have that information hopefully soon. We believe we may know their location. We don't have any reason to believe that they are a general threat to society, more that it appears at this point to be a targeted type of attack.
Japan is in the grip of its most intense cold snap this season, with heavy snow blanketing much of the country's Sea of Japan coast. The Hokuriku region, Niigata Prefecture, and parts of southern Tohoku are in for rapid snow accumulation, thanks to a weather phenomenon known as the Japan Sea Polar Air Mass Convergence Zone, or JPCZ. By late Wednesday morning, Minamiyazu Town in Fukushima Prefecture had already seen 20 centimeters of snow, while Toyama City's Inotani District recorded 19 centimeters. Toyama City itself reached a snow depth of 51 centimeters, the deepest this season and the first time in 2 years that snow there has exceeded 50 centimeters. And the snow isn't letting up anytime soon. By midday Thursday, forecasters say the Tohoku region and Niigata could see up to a meter of snow. The Hokuriku region could get 80 centimeters, Gifu up to 70, and other parts of Japan, including Hokkaido, Kinki, and Chugoku, are also in for significant snowfall. Even Kyushu could see some accumulation. Blizzard-like conditions are expected along the Sea of Japan coast, with strong winds and high waves adding to the hazards. The Meteorological Agency is warning of potential traffic disruptions, power outages, avalanches, and fallen trees, urging residents to stay alert. And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you for joining us. Good night.